Hey there, fellow garden enthusiasts! Let's talk about a fascinating and eco-friendly way to enrich your garden vermiculture. You might know it better as worm composting. It's like having a miniature recycling team right in your backyard. Vermiculture harnesses the power of worms, those little composting champions, to transform kitchen scraps into nutrient-rich gold for your garden. It's a natural process that mimics nature's own decomposition cycle. Worms eat our food scraps and break them down into castings, also known as worm poop. And let me tell you, this worm poop is pure garden magic. These castings are packed with beneficial microbes and nutrients that regular compost can only dream of. We're talking about a superfood boost for your plants, promoting vigorous growth and an abundance of blooms. Plus, it's incredibly satisfying to turn what would have been waste into a valuable resource. So, are you ready to invite these composting champions into your life? Let's get started on building the perfect worm home. Now let's find the perfect abode for your new composting crew. Don't worry, you don't need anything fancy. You can easily make a worm bin from a plastic storage tote. Just drill some holes in the lid for ventilation. If you prefer a more rustic look, a wooden crate works wonderfully. Just line it with plastic to retain moisture. For a ready-made solution, you can find commercial worm farms online or at garden centers. They often come with stacking trays, which is super convenient for harvesting your worm castings. No matter what you choose, make sure your worm bin has good drainage. You don't want your worms swimming in excess moisture. Too much water can create an unhealthy environment for your composting pals. A few well-placed holes at the bottom of your bin will do the trick. Remember, a happy worm is a productive worm. Choose a well-ventilated and well-drained home for your composting buddies, and they'll reward you with buckets of garden gold. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the worms. For composting, you'll want to get red wigglers, also known as Eisenia fetida. These little guys are composting machines, munching through your kitchen scraps with gusto. You can usually find red wigglers at your local bait shop or order them online. When choosing your worms, look for lively, active ones. Avoid any that look sluggish or have a dry white ring around their bodies. Once you've got your worms, gently introduce them to their new home. Spread them out over the bedding and let them burrow in. They might seem a bit shy at first, but don't worry, they'll quickly acclimate to their new digs. Section 4. Creating a cozy bedding. Just like us, worms appreciate a comfy bed. Their bedding is not only their home, but also their food source. Shredded newspaper, cardboard, and dried leaves make excellent bedding materials. These materials provide a good balance of carbon and nitrogen, which is essential for decomposition. Soak the bedding materials thoroughly, and then squeeze out any excess water. You want the bedding to be damp, like a wrung-out sponge, but not soaking wet. Mix in a handful of soil to introduce beneficial microbes. This will help kickstart the composting process. Spread the bedding evenly in the bin, creating a layer about 6 to 8 inches deep. Your worms will be thrilled with their new cozy home, ready to get to work. Section 5. The Worm Feast. Feeding your composting crew. Now for everyone's favorite part, feeding time. Worms are not picky eaters, but there are some do's and don'ts when it comes to their diet. Fruits and vegetables are always a hit, as are coffee grounds and tea bags. Crushed eggshells are also great for adding calcium to the mix. Avoid feeding your worms meat, dairy, oily foods, or heavily processed foods. These items can attract pests and create an unpleasant odor. Also, go easy on citrus fruits and onions, as they can make the bedding too acidic. When feeding your worms, bury the food scraps under a layer of bedding. This will prevent fruit flies and keep the bin smelling fresh. A good rule of thumb is to feed your worms only as much as they can consume in a week. If you see food scraps piling up, hold back on feeding until they've caught up. Section 6. Keeping your worm family happy and healthy. Maintaining your worm bin is a breeze. Just keep an eye on the moisture levels, ensuring the bedding remains damp but not soggy. If the bedding feels dry, mist it with water using a spray bottle. If it's too wet, add more dry bedding materials like shredded newspaper. Worms thrive in temperatures between 55 and 77 degrees Fahrenheit, or 12 to 25 degrees Celsius. Keep your bin in a cool, shaded spot, away from direct sunlight and extreme temperatures. You can also use a thermometer to monitor the temperature inside the bin. If you notice any fruit flies buzzing around, it's a sign that you might be overfeeding your worms. Bury the food scraps deeper and make sure they're covered with bedding. You can also try using a worm blanket, which is a piece of burlap or cardboard placed on top of the bedding. With a little care and attention, your worm bin will thrive, providing you with a steady supply of nutrient-rich castings for your garden. Section 7. Reaping the rewards of worm composting. Congratulations on joining the wonderful world of worm composting. By now, your bin should be teeming with happy composting worms, turning your kitchen scraps into garden gold. Harvesting your worm castings is a simple and rewarding process. Once the bin is mostly filled with castings, it's time to harvest. You can gently scoop out the castings from one side of the bin, leaving the worms and any undigested food scraps on the other side. Allow the worms to migrate to the fresh bedding, and then you can harvest the remaining castings. Use your homemade worm castings to enrich your garden beds, potting mix, or even your houseplants. Your plants will thank you for the nutrient boost, rewarding you with lush growth and vibrant blooms. Vermiculture is a win-win situation, reducing waste, enriching your garden, and connecting you with the natural world. It's a fun and rewarding way to give back to the environment while reaping the benefits of a thriving garden. Happy composting!